Partnership for the Advancement of New Americans. Thank you for the opportunity to present and discuss the mayor's proposal. And as part of the newly formed San Diego Housing Justice Coalition, I will be upfront and frank. I'm tired. And San Diegans in general are tired of putting a Band-Aid over an issue that should have been a priority a long time ago. Looking at the rates of homelessness and hidden homelessness and the number of families and community members that are struggling to put a roof over their heads, it is our moral responsibility and obligation to rise to the challenge and look at the hard, cold facts that I presented during the special council meeting on homelessness. And I will make that same presentation again so that we can kind of get it drilled into our heads. I mentioned during the special council meeting on homelessness that we are in dire need of real change and in dire need of leadership. From immigrants to refugees to our veterans to so much more, our families deserve better. Our San Diegan families deserve better, and our children deserve better. Homelessness cannot be addressed without us addressing affordable housing. And if we are truly sincere in solving this crisis, then the conversation should not be about funding expansion of the convention center, but about the root causes of this issue and how we can solve them. We will not be tricked or bamboozled. Let us get rid of the smoke and mirrors surrounding this proposal and look at the facts. With the skyrocketing cost of housing, we need to have a real conversation about what affordable housing truly means. Affordable housing is when your household is spending up to 30% of your monthly income on mortgage or rents, taxes, and utilities. It does not mean cheap or subsidized housing or housing affordability. If San Diego families, especially our low-income and very low-income families, are spending more than 30% of their income on housing costs, then they are not living in affordable homes. They are not living in dignity. This proposal, if we look at the number of individuals who are at risk of being displaced and the number of individuals who are out on the streets, I don't know why we're discussing funding the convention center expansion. If you look at the housing stock, if we were to separate the entire housing stock into two categories of what we consider affordable and unaffordable, we can clearly see that half of the stock is unaffordable. But this has a greater impact and severe cost burden for renters. Imagine spending more than half of your income on housing. And the severe cost burden leaves little room for anything else, even basic necessities such as food and healthcare, putting families again at the risk of homelessness. Now, who lives in these unaffordable houses? And out of the renter households in the city of San Diego, we can clearly see 3/4 of them have an income below $50,000. More than 60% have an income below $35,000. The next chart illustrates data from the National Low-Income Housing Coalition. You see that as income increases, or as income decreases, the share of affordable and available units falls considerably. At 50% AMI, we are talking about families making $30,000 to $40,000 a year. In these families, there's a shortage of 135,000 units. So what happens if we compare the entire stock of rental housing that is affordable and available to the renter households based on their income? If you can move on to the next slide, please. We see that moderate income renter households barely make it even, and there's a surplus at the top. However, the demand-supply gap grows considerably at the lower income levels. Next slide, please. I want everyone to take a look at this chart. I want to highlight not only the severe costs that are faced by families with lower incomes, but also the housing crisis that we are in is an extreme hardship and affects more severely our low-income families. The mayor's proposal intends to give breadcrumbs to this issue in the guise of solving homelessness, when in reality it saps the political will to do what we need to do as a city. So we are displacing and putting more families at risk for homelessness in addition to the 8,000 plus we have living on the streets. We do not need to fund moneyed interests. We as a city do not need to turn our money into dust. We do not need to turn our money into dust. We need to stand with our families and our community and address this as it deserves, instead of having it as a footnote in a proposal that negatively impacts our city and its people. At a local level, the data from the last housing element, it is clear that the city has overproduced housing for higher incomes and underproduced at lower incomes. And if we examine these numbers, and I want this chart to be up there, we can clearly see that the total housing units permitted by the city for above moderate income levels was 152%. As Steve Russell from the Housing Federation indicated, and as mentioned before, what we have is not an hourglass, but a goblet in which we are providing for our above moderate income families at the expense of median and low-income families. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Trickle-down housing economics does not work. Our families cannot live on permits. They cannot live on papers. And our low-income and extremely low-income families and children do not deserve this severe burden that we are laying on them. Not only are rents increasing, but the income levels have stayed as well. Please go to the next slide. A worker needed last year to earning the minimum wage needed to work 84 hours a week to be able to afford one-bedroom apartment. In 2017, with a $1 increase in rent, next slide, that means that they are working 90 hours per week. And as income has stayed flat, next slide please, we can see that in order to afford a one-bedroom apartment in San Diego, an individual has to be earning $34 an hour. $34 an hour, $6,000 a month. And just to be clear, the affordable housing units that the city has built thus far does not add up to the amount of affordable housing units we are losing. So let me be clear again. We are letting our families down. I mentioned that we are not only in dire need of change to handle this crisis, but we need to be committed to our low-income families, and I'm asking each and every single one of us here to be committed to our families. The mayor's proposal is about expanding the convention center, not solving this crisis. Homelessness and infrastructure are included in the language simply to garner public support. The public can see through this, guys, and we will challenge it. It is our moral obligation to do so. Infill and affordable housing is also a key strategy for achieving the Climate Action Plan goals. This mantle of trust is on our shoulders. I urge the committee to show leadership and some spine and not put our hard-working, tax-paying families and our most vulnerable populations up for sale. Thank you.
Next, we have Stephen Russell. You have some time CDT for a total of 2 minutes.
Great. Thank you, honorable council members, council president. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I'm here primarily to speak